Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and welcome to Theology Thursday. Now I've been creating these different tags for the different questions of the Westminster Shorter Catechism, and today we're answering question 12. I've been working through the Catechism using this book, the Westminster Shorter Catechism for Study Classes by G.I. Williamson, and I will link that down below if you want to pick one up for yourself. Now, before I start talking about question 12, I did want to speak a little bit on how I created this tag. Last night I had sat down and was feeling super creative and wanted to create a reel for Instagram, but that didn't happen because every single time that I started to create something, it just failed. Like I had all these ideas and nothing seemed to work. So instead, I didn't want to waste the products that I was using and the different things I had created. And so instead, I just created layers upon layers. So here is my first layer that I decided to put down. This is one of the Tim Holtz backdrops. And I am running out of this Barely Arts glue. I'm just trying to get those last little drops out. So it takes me a little bit of extra time to get those out. But anyways, I am putting this backdrop down first so that you'll see in a second, but that I have another layer behind my Duralar film. So with this Duralar film that I'm going to speak on, I was trying so many different ways to use that new By the Well for God stained glass stencil. And so I was trying to use the icicle crackle paste from Tim Holtz's holiday line and then sprinkle on some of the embossing glaze and get a really cool stained glass effect. However, that didn't happen. And so I ended up just pouring on multiple layers of this embossing glaze and just covering up the cross a little bit. You can still see through it, and that's fine with me. But I actually really ended up liking this effect. It was just, I don't know why I like it so much, but it was really fun, and I like all the texture that it adds. Now, I know I've spoken about Duralar film a couple times. It is basically like acetate that is heat resistant. So you can use your heat tool on it and it won't warp. So that is why I love it so much. I purchased it in big sheets, like probably 2 by 3 feet at an art store in Atlanta. And I'm planning on going back and picking up some more because I'm running a little low. It is really cool material. So anyways, all this to say that mistakes happen to all of us. And if things don't come out the way that you anticipate or that you want, continue working with that product or set it aside and come back to it, because usually, especially with mixed media, you can use that product in a different way and no one will even notice. So the rest of this tag is me adding layers of vintage goods and also a little bit of Tim Holtz and Felicity Jane florals. So let me move on and talk to you about question 12 of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. So question 12 is, what special act of providence did God exercise toward man in the state wherein he was created? And the answer being, when God had created man, he entered into a covenant of life with him, upon condition of perfect obedience, forbidding him to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil upon the pain of death. When we think of a covenant, we often think of two different parties of equal value coming together and making a covenant together. But this is not the kind of covenant that God expresses. We are not equal partners with God in this covenant, and it actually shows his absolute sovereignty in this covenant. So I'm going to read a portion of this chapter to you because G.I. Williamson just creates these really well understood illustrations that I can't explain without his illustration. So anyways, we see a picture of this stick figure that he calls Shorty and his dog. And G.I. Williamson writes, in his hand he has a bone. He is going to give that bone to his dog. But before he does give it to his dog, he requires the dog to obey him by sitting at his command. Now, this is not unlike a covenant given by God to man. Certainly, we can see from this illustration that Shorty and his dog are not making any agreement. It was Shorty and Shorty alone who decided to give his dog this bone. And it was Shorty and Shorty alone who decided what Fido must do in order to have that bone. Neither can we say that Fido has really, quote-unquote, earned that bone. No, it would be his duty to obey Shorty, even if there were no reward. If we are to speak of the work that Fido performs, then we do not mean that he has paid for his bone by this little act of obedience. It is only that Shorty has decided to make this the condition upon which he will reward his dog with the gift of that bone. So it is that when we speak of the covenant of works, we do not mean that Adam could do anything that would make God owe him something in return. We only mean that God was pleased to require a certain obedience as a condition upon which a gift would then be given. We call the first covenant a covenant of life, then, because it was life that God promised to Adam, as Shorty promises his dog a bone. And we also call it a covenant of works because God required Adam to obey him before he conferred the gift. However, we know that Adam did not keep his covenant and did not obey God, and therefore we as a human race needed a Savior, Jesus Christ. We see multiple verses throughout the Bible that back up question 12 of the Westminster Shorter Catechism, one of them being Hosea 6:7, which says, "But they like men have transgressed the covenant." Also Romans 10:5 says, "For Moses describeth the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which doeth those things shall live by them." And lastly, in this chapter, we read Genesis 2:17, which says, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." So we know that in question 12, there's a covenant of life that requires perfect obedience to God. And we know that we cannot match up to that. And that is why we read in further questions in the Westminster Catechism why we need a Savior. So that is basically the abridged version of question 12 of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. If you want to know more information or do some more studying, definitely go check out the book. I will link it down below in the description. So now I'm just working on layering all these different pieces together. These are some Felicity Jane florals that I had in my stash, and I did add a little bit of frosted crystal to them to make them more of a matte finish. And I really wanted that Duralar film to stand out, and so that is why I'm not covering the top portion of it. I liked the typography coming through it with that backdrop that I used, and so that is why I'm layering everything on the bottom portion. To add a little bit more texture, I end up grabbing some of this mummy cloth. I had stashed some away this fall, and I am just laying it on the bottom, folding it over, and I am stapling it to just the Duralar film. So you'll see kind of the side view, so those staples will not go through to the back of the tag. That way it won't mess up any of my typing on the back side. I don't really mind if this floral cluster hangs off the tag just a little bit, but I did cut off some of the tinier, thinner pieces because I knew they weren't going to be substantial enough to hold as I was flipping through all the different tags. So for those pieces, I ended up keeping them and just tucking them in underneath the photograph right here. Now I'm just gonna snip off the edge of this photo that's hanging over, and then I will add the number 12. Now I've tried to add the number on the front of the tag on most of these tags, and today was a very easy way to do it. I remembered that I had these numeral kind of Dymo labels, but they're actually from Tim Holtz, and the 1 and the 2 are obviously right next to each other, and so I'm just gonna snip that off and then peel back the backing. It's nice that they are already sticky, and I will just add that to the top of the photograph right there. After that, this tag will be done. If you've enjoyed this Theology Thursday, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. I'll try to link all the products down below, including that book that I'm using, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.